Hello. I just finished Kurt Vonnegut's The Sirens of Titan. And I started reading it because I went down to the beach. Try to take it easy. June 24th. And somebody had loaned me the Game of Thrones, which I'd finished, and I was thinking of going and getting the second one, but the used bookstore didn't have it, so I had somebody also loan me this book, the same person, I think, actually. And so I read it, and I knew this is going to be Kurt Vonnegut. This is probably going to be, like, a little bit emotionally, strenuous compared to reading Game of Thrones, which has lots of ups and downs and drama, but it's all sort of a more exciting thing. There's horrible stuff, but you go, it's totally different than like Kurt Vonnegut. It's more like Camus. Like, what the fuck's gonna happen next to me, the reader? Don't even care what's going on in the book. It's just me because it keeps. Okay, so I thought it was an interesting thing. One, this book relates a lot to the purpose and value of life and the lack thereof. So the basic idea of the story is there's this guy. He's gone off and he's fallen before the beginning of the story into basically like a wormhole. There's another term for it in the book. And he's spread out between the sun and Betelgeuse. And so he materializes various places in the solar system at regular periods. And he creates this whole plot where he builds an army on Mars to attack Earth. And he's terrible. The Army on Mars, this book's from the late 50s, and the Army on Mars is like from an old 50s sci-fi thing. They have control things in their head where they can be given pain, and they're just recruited and stolen, drunks coming out of bars, the agents of Mars, and they're all humans. There is no Martians. They're just recruited humans by this one guy. And then so it's this terrible thing. He has friends strangle friends, and there's rapes. It's all Vonnegut. And hard things happen. But it kind of builds it up that, well, the reason he does this is he sends off this army to Mars, over 150,000 people, and only 400 Earthlings are killed, and almost all of the Martian, who were former Earthlings, our army is killed. And it was all to unite the human race. And he creates a religion, because in this state where he's stretched out in this wormhole, he can see the future, so he makes predictions, and he turns us all into this religion to bring people together. And you're wondering towards, there's like fifth or less of the book left, and you're like, that's the point? No, one, it's Vonnegut, and but also the paradise isn't so good. I mean, like, people that are really strong wear heavy weights so that other people won't think that they're taking advantage of their luck of the draw of having strong bodies and stuff like this. And they're still religious and superstitious and stuff. And so it's like, well, it doesn't seem like his plan was all that great. But maybe is that going to be the point? And all these people are manipulated, and the question is, what's my life for? And I'm being used up by people and things like this. All right. But then in the end, it turns out that, throughout the whole book, we were told that one place this guy who goes into the wormhole materializes or ends up is on Titan, and he meets a space traveler who is taking a message from his people, and his spaceship broke down, and he had to land on Titan, and he needs a part, and he'd been waiting there for a part for like over 200,000 years. So when he landed there, he had sent a distress signal that took some 150,000 years to get to his home planet because of the speed of light. And they had a way to communicate back a little bit quicker, because through their science, with a lot of their energy, there's this special energy source called the universal will to become, which is the energy that starts universes. They're able to manipulate remotely. Okay, so it turns out the whole plan of this guy, the reason he falls in the wormhole and everything that's ever happened in mankind's history was really just to get this spaceman's part to him. Because, so, to send a light wave message back would have taken hundreds of thousands of years, but what they could do is they could fiddle with the life on Earth. And they could actually, in a shorter period of time than that, like, create a civilization that would make Stonehenge. Stonehenge, when read from above, from outer space, with this guy on Titan looking at Earth, was a message from his home planet saying, you know, the part just shipped, or whatever. It's coming soon. And the whole war and everything was just to create it so that the part which was sort of created by chance on Earth, but actually by the planning of these aliens, and would come and be the lucky piece of a kid, and the kid would be, and people would be depressed just enough that they'd end up going to Titan just so they could deliver this little part to the spaceman. So all of human history, all of its ups and downs, all of the plans of people that's like, yeah, I did something terrible, but it was to bring people together. I warred on Earth so we'd all come together. It was all because somebody just wanted to deliver a spare part. And then, furthermore, the messenger, he's not supposed to open the message, but he ends up opening the message, and all it says is greetings. So, yeah, it's kind of about being used up and used by other people. And there's a weird, overt statement as to what the message is, but I don't think you could take Vonnegut at the word of any character. But the main character sort of says, well, in the end, in his 70s, he finally figured out all the bitterness and stuff of being used in plots, and being in plots you don't know what the meaning is, and the meaning, there isn't really a meaning. You know, they said that, well, the point of life is to love anybody that you can, that's nearby. If you can, do it. So, but I don't think that was the message of the book, as I would read it overall, but that's the conclusion. A couple of the main characters who had been highly abused, really, by this whole process come to in the end. So there's a couple other interesting things in it. One is the way the Martian army was conditioned. I found that fascinating. Okay, so it's negative conditioning. They have a plate in their head, and if they aren't good soldiers, it'll start to hurt. Now, they think sometimes that it's like for having bad thoughts, because that's how it seems when you have something like this. But really, there's other officers or other people in the military that have a little device. They could push it, and if they see you not doing what they want, they'll push it, and they program by conditioning. Now, the interesting part of this is that in this army, the generals and colonels and stuff are not the real commanders. They can give orders, but they have the plates in their head too. And all the real commanders are just like privates, and they're low-ranking people, because they can make their commanding officer do what they want. You know, the top general of the military thinks he's running the military. Really, it's his assistant that is one of the real commanders, and that guy can suggest something, and until the general gets it, he keeps giving him pain. The general has lots of extra headaches. The privates in the army have a much better situation, because they're not expected to think up commands that they get wrong, and then they're punished constantly for it. And it's an interesting idea, an interesting metaphor to me, that with this kind of conditioning, the real leaders are not the people up the hierarchy. Okay, take away the guys with the buttons that can put pain into your head, and think of it metaphorically, and it's kind of interesting, because what we have is a social system that can give you negative feedback, you know, social rejection that people just seem to just fucking hate. It just drives them nuts. They'd rather burn their hand off, it seems, than have that negative social feeling. It gets tied in. The Vogue ties it straight into your sense of self-worth, your emotional sense of self-worth. They don't want that. That's the real boss. Not your boss in the company, but that boss and how everybody else sees you. And that really more determines your future. That's actually the carrot and the stick, the behavioralist functionality. I thought that was interesting. And as a matter of fact, I think I'm going to use that structure in this mythology that I'm creating, where an element of it is sort of a parable for the invention of slavery. The other thing is, so the messenger in this book was a robot. He was a machine. He seemed to have emotions and stuff, though well, read the book for that. But he was a machine, and the story of how the machines had taken over, they're like, nobody, the machines in his society, they build each other and produce each other. Nobody knew really where they came from, but the story went, there was a race of people, and they were always obsessed with what their purpose was. And they would study, and then they'd find that they'd come out with a purpose that was lowly, like to feed yourself. They didn't like that, so they made machines to cover those purposes, and they did higher purposes. But every time they'd find out a higher purpose, it wasn't really up to snuff for what they were looking for. Finally, they made machines so good, they set the machines to find out, well, what is our purpose of us, your creators? And the machines realized, well, you don't really have one. And the people were disgusted, because they thought there was nothing worse than, purposelessness. So they started killing each other. But they weren't particularly good at that, so finally they built a machine to kill them, and then the machines, in a matter of days, killed them all off and lived with purpose. And then the purpose, of course, turns out to be, we're going to send a message of greetings. It's going to take 500,000 years. We're going to spend 250 million years fucking with animals on Earth just so that they can deliver a part, because this is how we do it, to somebody that happens to be stranded in their solar system. So, yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I think I would have emotionally been better off reading Game of Thrones. That was a lot to go through. Okay, cheers. That was Kurt Vonnegut's The Sirens of Titan.